Hi, everyone. It's Mindrolling. Raghu Marcus here with my sometime co-host around matters of social action, particularly Jared Gagan Levy. Hi, Jared.
Hi
Gagan.
there. Nice to be with you.
Yes, same here. And he's introduced me to somebody who I met over the last couple of years, a couple of times at SVN, Social Venture Network, which we're going to talk about. Joel Solomon. Joel, welcome.
I'm really happy to be here with both of you.
Joel's written a pretty cool book that has some outstanding implications, and it's called The Clean Money Revolution, Reinventing Power, Purpose, and Capitalism, that's just a little thing that he's devoted his life to. And I would have to say, is it not quite relevant with everything that's being highlighted all around us due to the new administration and what's going on there? So I think the book really actually speaks, it's just right timing, is it not? I mean, I don't know if you had this in mind. You wrote this before the election.
You know, when we wrote the book, I talked to the publisher and I said, I don't know, I think this guy could get elected.
You did?
Will I be able to do a postscript? Can I do a postscript? What if it happens? And when it came time, I was shocked for so many days. I was in shock, and they gave me a chance, and I couldn't really, I didn't know what to say by then. I just let it go.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, what could one say? Oh boy! All right, well, let's start with at the very beginning. And what are we talking about? Clean money, and just edify that for us.
Okay, well, clean money is a direction and an idea, and the point is that we do have significant choices, whether we're consumers or we hold wealth. We've got bank accounts. We might have a little bit of retirement money. We are actually connected to that money. Where did it come from? Who and where did it affect? And then as we spend it or use it in other ways, how is that money representing our values on our behalf out in the world? That's the basic premise. One step further, I think that most of us would accept that the world is facing significant crisis. The people alive today are the first ones ever in the history of the planet to be able to destroy or damage as much as we are due to industrial revolution, technology revolution. And we're losing track of the past and the future. And money plays such a dominant and influential role on everything about society and many things about our lives that we need to be more conscious. We need to understand what our relationship with money is and what its impact has been or will be. And we need to take responsibility to look after the future and think long term with our actions while addressing our personal needs for security and putting a roof over our heads and feeding our children and all those daily activities. We need to really look at the whole picture.
In the book, the first line about what is clean money, at the very beginning, clean money is money aligned with a purpose beyond self-interest, which is kind of an oxymoron for the most part, right? I mean,
yeah.
So, I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just thinking that a lot of what we represent and we try and work with through the Be Here Now network and all the different podcasts we have with all these fantastic teachers is dealing with our self-interest. And of course, money is certainly a huge elephant on our shoulder in terms of self-interest. I mean, that is clearly one of the most significant issues in terms of the Buddhist canon and the um, you know, the disturbing emotions and thought patterns and so on. Greed, of course, is a major one of them. So when we're going after thinking that we can come from a place of that is not primarily of self-interest related to money, I mean, that is a very complex premise right off the bat.
Yeah. Well, I would say that both of these terms are aspirational, and it's important that we have high aspirations and that we think about the bigger picture while we think about ourselves. So if we need to set our aspirations somewhere that is inspiring, and when we look back from our deathbeds, left us feeling proud and good about what we did with our lives. Mm-hmm. So there's no perfect clean money, there's no perfect people, and there's no perfect generosity or management of self-interest. But we deal with this complexity in everything that we do, no matter what the topic. Let's say how we treat those that we care the most about. Our behavior is hopefully at its best there. Why not apply that to the people at the other end of our money as well?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that you talk about in the book, it's early also in the book, under the subchapter, Waking Up, the idea of the extraordinary inequity that's going on and the resentment and so on that takes place, which is obviously in our age has been fueled dynamically all around the world. So it is an absolutely crucial issue. Maybe, I'd love to hear from you a little bit about the manipulation that happens to create this resentment and inequity with our standard definition of money and power.
Yeah. Maybe size of population and scale is making it harder for us to just have a clear sense of morality and ethics and how we want to be in the world. Maybe technology is taking us away from the human heart and direct human connections. There are many reasons that things are more challenging at this particular time in evolution. But we nonetheless have responsibility, as I like to say, as ancestors. We are creating the world that will come after us. I believe that most people in history lived with that central tenet, that they respected the people who worked hard and went through all kinds of difficulties in order for those of us today to have a good life. And I think it's important that we remember that, and that our aspiration becomes to be loving and kind and have integrity in all of our actions. And that's for our own peace of mind and well-being. And that we do that and share that with the others who are in our lives and beyond. So for me, it's about a bit of a lost path where perhaps the modern era has pummeled our consciousness such that we revert, we get afraid, and from fear does grow greed. There's a question that I found for myself that I like to ask, which is, how much is enough? And for those who are struggling to have enough, blessings to you. I understand, and I have no question that you need to do what you have to do to take care of the things that matter to you. And nonetheless, there's a human factor and requirement that whatever we believe about spirituality, religion, before our lives and after our lives, how we are as who we are in the time that we have makes a big difference in every direction. And money should not be exempt from that examination. and practice.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. So there's some wonderful stories in the book, Joel, about you growing up and some of the things that happened to you. You had a particularly a major health confrontation that I think was. I usually ask people when I do these podcasts, what were the things that, as you were a young person growing into adulthood, what are the things that triggered you to actually realize there was a path beyond material senses, ego, and so on, that you then pursued? For me, I tell a famous story of seeing John Coltrane, my famous story of seeing John Coltrane and having an out-of-body experience when I was like 16,
Right.
17 years old, and then the psychedelics and all of that. But yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and what it was that triggered you into another consciousness, another vantage point, and then how it came together to you to do the kind of work you're doing with money at this time in your, for most of your life.
Well, there's a tableau answer to that. Some had to do with family. I was fortunate to have a father who was able to, as the child of an immigrant, build his way as an entrepreneur into being able to provide well for us. And by the time I was moving to my mid-teens, his business started to become successful. So that did give me a certain set of opportunities and privilege to get education and be exposed to things. Very, very importantly, my mother my mother's an artistic photographer now. She taught herself in her late 30s and went on to a great deal of acclaim, and she's collected and shown and published. And she gave me a perspective on the world. She traveled to all parts of the world and photographed people of all classes and circumstances. And that gave me an additional eye into the rest of the world. So that was important. Secondly, my context in the late 60s, as turbulence and lots of questions were being answered, even in Chattanooga, Tennessee, I was feeling that. There was an important evening when my parents were out and I was watching the Democratic Convention in Chicago when the police riots happened. And the chanting, the whole world's watching, the whole world's watching. Mm-hmm. And hundreds of thousands of young people out in the streets. And I would say that was one moment of consciousness that was important, where I was aware of being aware and thinking just how profound this was and how unsettled I was, and that I was inspired at how I would, with my life, be contributory. And I'll skip ahead to, in university, I had the really interesting and wonderful honor to be able to work in the Jimmy Carter for President campaign from the very beginning when he was at 0 in the polls. I watched a very well-meaning, high values person go all the way to the White House with a strong intention, and who seemed to carry a certain kind of consciousness that was deep and meaningful. And I got a lot of exposure to Jimmy Carter, and this began a next level. And just after that, I was diagnosed with the family genetic kidney disease that comes through my father's side. I knew that most of those family members had died fairly young. And the diagnosis at the time was, this will progress at some pace. There's nothing you can do about it. You may die soon or you may live long. And that really kicked the next level into gear. And I chose not to go into the family business. I chose not to go to the White House. And I took off to seek and search and wanted to understand what the purpose was of my life and what did I really want to accomplish. And I felt that I needed time to experience being in my body, being in nature, and that I needed something to step outside the norm with, and I guess you could say to find myself and find my direction. So I carried on to study an esoteric gardening method called French intensive biodynamic. I went to West Sonoma County in California, and that was quite a consciousness shift, just to move geographies and go deep into the soil and all the factors and elements around plants and soil. And from there, I did a lot of reading. I got myself into a caretaking position of an orca research laboratory, killer whales, in a remote location up the British Columbia coast, and spent 3 years in a lot of silence and in deep exploration of nature, and box loads of books of all kinds of wise people, politics, gender, history, all kinds of things. And I came out of that with one key revelation. So this is the culmination of the story, which is I was struggling with questions of gender and power and privilege and all of those things back in, we're talking early 80s. And I realized that for me, that what was going to be the most important thing about having what I had was that I not squander it foolishly, and that I do something that really mattered. And because I'd been brought up around money and business and finance, that I would go back in and experiment with the possibility that business and money could be a powerful force for good. And that led me on the pathway that has me here speaking with you today.
Oh. In the book, you talk about a poll of the famously values-aligned millennial said that businesses have a responsibility to build a better world. That hasn't changed much as they've entered the workforce. 61% of millennials in senior positions say they have chosen not to undertake a task at work because it went against their personal value or ethics. And you say it's a global imperative. It's an awakening driven by love. Money, finance, and wealth management have ignored love for too long. Love is our antidote for fear and despair. Love is a shorthand way of saying that we must show we care by acting on our values, ethics, and morals for ourselves, our families, all life on the planet, and the future. And, we have somebody here who is purposefully here to represent his generation, Mr. Levy.
The top end of that generation. I love how you lump me into that millennial generation time to time. I think I got it by like a day.
Yeah,
he's a good representative of anything.
Anything, yeah. Right. Yeah, what do you think?
It's a great conversation to listen in on, because I love Joel. I in the thinking here. I read the book before it was printed, and I feel it's so interesting because some of these things that I see on an individual level, levels of attachment that I work on in my personal life, and then I work on it in my business as well. And it's like almost every self-help book you can read for yourself, you could apply to business, your business in some way. And when I look at this and I think about, I love the vision here, because it's a vision of a new world where folks and businesses really do see clean money as a long-term risk mitigation strategy. This isn't and it's been positioned. One of the disservices I think that some of the impact investing community has done is kind of position some of this as it's like a do good, and then you might have to not that we've positioned, but it's been positioned in a way of do good. You may sacrifice a bit in your return on investment, and I just don't see that as the case. And I think that Joel's leaning into he's an example of how that is not the case, and he's leaning into a way to bring that to life personally, but also through his fund and now through his thought leadership, to lead by example. So, for me, it's it's real aspiration to be on here with you and talking about this.
And do you want to bet on fossil fuels or renewables? Do you want to bet on food full of chemicals or organic food? And do you want to bet on green buildings that are low or zero emissions, or do you want to bet on energy hogs? Like these things, with 7 billion people going on 10 billion people, and everybody's lifestyle trying to increase, we've got to be smarter about how the economy is done. And anybody that thinks those are poor long-term investments needs to take a look in the mirror, shake their head, because we can't keep going the way we are, and the price will start to show. You can disguise it with unfair public policies. You can push the tax burden onto those who can afford it least. You can cut social services. You can accumulate money, but you may have I don't know if I think there's a hell. I think here's what I think hell would be: that my great grandchildren look back and say, "What was that buffoon doing? What were they doing?" So there's no concessionary returns necessary to invest in what matters.
And so to bring it back to the personal, because I think, there's this way that I want to show up in the world, and we all want to show up in the world. We have these intentions of who we want to be. And then every once in a while, maybe you realize you're a little off that path. You maybe made a choice, or you consumed something that wasn't perfectly in line with that path. And, here we always talk about, bringing yourself back with non-judgment, with laughter, but bringing yourself back and having that awareness. So with money, because and the attachment to this kind of, deity almost that has, come to life in our society. I mean, what is some of the practice that you've done over your life, personally, to work with that, to work with that, to be able to have a healthy relationship with money?
Well, number one is to ask oneself on a regular basis, how much is enough? Second question is, if I have some, how does it represent me in the world in a way that I'm proud of and that is aligned with my values? The third is work-life integration. Be sure that you create a life that's got love in it, that's got nourishment and rejuvenation and inspiration. And not everyone gets to do that. It's not the karma, really, of everyone, or the opportunity, and our structural impediments. However, it's well known that often we see that those in the most difficult conditions actually seem to have a better idea about love and well-being and happiness. But nonetheless, we all have to struggle with this. So in my life, it was a factor of coming to understand my inner self, my psychological and emotional self, my spiritual self. And without going into full detail about all of those, I'll just say I'm a strong believer that the examined life is a better life. And we all have the opportunity to look at ourselves and understand what motivates us, what inspires us, and what allows us to be peaceful, peace-loving human beings.
There's something that is such a great description in this book, Joel, from somebody who is a contemporary and I think a good friend of yours. I mean, I only know of him. I know of him through Ram Dass, and that's Roger Millikan Jr.
Oh, yes.
And I just have to read this one thing because it really says, this coming from someone who, like yourself, is really trying to make a change in this world. He says, it's about holding tenderly the mystery that binds us together, which is hard to articulate, but unmistakable when we feel it. be it rumbling with a belly laugh, sobbing with pain, or quietly feeling the attunement of our grants committee with a larger purpose. It's about a radiance which increases as we come closer to who we can be and what we can do as individuals within our own communities of family, friends, and work, as a community of loving, committed friends, and as a foundation dedicated to using our inner and outer wealth to help our hurting world heal itself. Inner and outer wealth. I mean, I think this is really beautifully said by him.
So beautiful.
I guess what occurs to me is, and we're going to talk a little bit about SVN and Threshold and your involvement with both of these organizations, which I'm quite familiar with. But I guess I know, like when we go to SVN, the first year I was there, Jared arranged for Ram Dass. He did a video with him, and that was shown at the beginning of the convention and so on. And he reiterated the fact that no matter what you're trying to do, using the fantastic interconnectivity of all these people at this conference, all coming there with the single-minded purpose to really help our hurting world heal itself. I mean, I think that's, I love the way that's put. And Ram Dass said, but we cannot forget doing the work on our own hearts while we are working in outer social action. And I just, what does that mean? How has that had an impact? Because I know you were at SVN from very early stages, I think, right?
Oh, yes. At the founding meeting.
Right. Okay. So that can't get in earlier. And
40.
by the Social Venture Network, just give go ahead, Jared, give us a one-liner on Social Venture Network.
Social Venture Network, it's really a community of folks that are using business as a force for good. And some of that is supporting each other and leaders in leading businesses that are truly, triple bottom line businesses, thoughtful in kind of all aspects of their business around planet, people and profit. And some of that is actually galvanizing the folks there to actually work on more systemic change initiatives. So, big, American Sustainable Business Council, for instance, grew out of Social Venture Network as an advocacy group to represent triple bottom line business on the Hill, in DC and so on. And then there's groups like Bally that's working in local, living economies, and B Corp, which is, you can now get certified as a triple bottom line business, and on and on. So that's what it is. But really it's a tribe of folks that do try to bring love into their business. And we all have a lot of fun together as well.
Mm.
You just gave away my business school.
But
it's really important to be at the knees of people that were on this path.
Right. But what did you find from those early days? Obviously, I think Ram Dass was around then. How did you yourself respond to the idea that simultaneous to the outer work, there had to be everyone individually working on themselves? Was that something people really recognized back then?
I think that they did, and I described to you earlier in my journey that I had gone into effectively a almost isolation and contemplative period, caretaking and watching killer whales in a remote spot. And so I was inclined to that direction. And so in business, I had a negative impression of business. I have to say that a predecessor organization, the Threshold Foundation, it was working on issues of philanthropy and personal issues around money, and asking a lot of deep questions about that. So I had the benefit of some kind of ecumenical spiritual thinking that was interfacing with actual practical things in the world. So when in the discussions that preceded SVN, there were some of us that said we need to talk about business and money in this form, as well as philanthropy and the personal issues around money. And the Threshold community made a decision at that time that they were more interested in the philanthropy and the personal issues. And I understood that. In fact, I think I was president of the organization about this same time of Threshold Foundation. So when Josh Mailman and Wayne Silby and a group of people called together, a lot of the Threshold members, but others, to go talk about the issues of money, but with business, and that we need to continue looking at ourselves and working on our internal values and understandings, that just resonated with me, and it was ideal. I didn't know how to do all of it at that point, and therefore the need for a tribe, so to speak, or a place to learn and people to bounce ideas off of. But I got to see the beginnings, the earliest stages of the organic food movement, the clean household products movement, healthier childcare in large companies, and a lot of businesses that broke the mold and were getting patted on the head as if they were romantic idealists. And just as an example, I ended up making early investments in Stonyfield yogurt and seventh generation household cleaning, non-toxic household products. And both of those companies lost money for a long time and were kind of considered, dreamers. And we've made tremendous financial upside on both of those investments that were very small at the time. And this is being repeated now over and over again as those kind of outlier ideas have popularized and become real industries. So the whole SVN, balancing the external with the internal, really became my life practice.
Wonderful. There's another part of the book. Maybe you can talk a little bit about this, Gagan, Jared. For those who have, great opportunities presented to them or thrust upon them, the right school, the high-paying job, CEO, discernment can be strangely difficult. There are big pressures to conform. So this is all around what we face. It's so deeply entrenched, the ways of doing business and the ways of thinking about money. The pressures to conform, in spite of the voice inside us that says, I really don't want to do that. Often our family and those closest to us can't give us the advice we need at those turning points. As our society, culture, and economy dramatically transform in the years to come, more and more young people will be called upon to trust their ideals and instincts over the propulsive inertia of the expected way of doing things. To me, this is probably the most gigantic mountain to climb, and you're right there, Jared.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and it's also, it is being climbed and traversed by a lot of millennials. I mean, you're seeing words like purpose really enter the workplace in a massive way. And, what I've learned with my business is, there's all kinds of agencies, in San Francisco. I mean, I have a creative agency that works on building movements like this. And there's all kinds of agencies that offer, tons of money and benefits like, insurance for your dog and stuff like that. I mean, it's competitive here in San Francisco, but the
I
benefit
need that,
I can
by the
offer,
way. Okay.
I know you will
write
not
me and tell me
your
about
dog.
I need insurance for my dogs. Okay. I want to hear about that.
Well, but the benefit that they can't offer, that I can offer, is that purpose, that fulfillment. That there's the ability to find your mission and your life's work, and a movement that you can really contribute to here in a larger way.
Right.
So I'm seeing, yes, there are the golden handcuffs still in existence? Absolutely. And I, I do my best, but I certainly am still affected by a very ambitious, Jewish upbringing where you excel at everything and, strive and succeed. And I fight against that daily, and the last thing I'll say, and I want to turn it over to Joel, but in my life right now, what I'm realizing is the no's feel a lot better than the yeses. The no's I'm feeling really strong about no's, and getting very clear on where I need to spend my time. And it is certainly not in this kind of, sleepwalking, daydreaming stupor of doing things because that's how they were done.
Right.
Why, if we can find our way, the aspiration and then the reality of finding our way to be in work where we can make the choice of no and yes to things that have purpose and are meaningful to us, I'd say that's worth $1 billion to me. If I had it, I'd pay $1 billion to be able to be aligned with my purpose and have that be my daily work. Why would I do anything other than that, given the option?
Yeah. And just going on from there, you talk about money. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is hard stuff. It's like, this is the stuff that I think I have so many conversations with people about. They've got their practice, right? Their sadhana in the morning. They wake up, they do meditation, they do yoga and these things, and that's what they consider their the practice. And then they enter their day and they go potentially work for somebody they don't respect in a place they're not respected for, a mission that is isn't in connection with their life's purpose. And so, it really, to your point of like getting solid internally and doing that work. It's amazing to hear Joel's story of, going and being with the killer whales and gardening and, and coming back to a place of what I'm guessing is stillness and certainly where you can actually feel that truth start to emerge and then actualize that out in the world for yourself. And then, start to look around and be with others that are on that same ride and on that movement of, towards clean money and other, purpose-driven movements and support each other in your personal journeys, but also in the larger journeys, because it's really not easy work to be, salmon, to be kind of going against the grain. So, I when I get off these podcasts sometimes, I really love, I've been listening to the Heart Mind app all the time and checking in with the podcasts that are coming through and stuff. And it really does help me to then come center back internally to truth and to source so that I then can try to get better about actualizing on that intention when it comes to the rest of my day and life. Mm.
Yeah, we're pretty fortunate that we can have that kind of life and opportunity. But the fact is now that is more available to more people because we're not the only ones thinking this way. And back to that 7.5 billion people, there's all kinds of awakening going on around the planet. And you can create your own cohort wherever you are. Find people that you, I guess you could say, share practice with. And in this case, a practice of seeking towards maximum love rather than maximum money, while doing, having a sense of fulfillment and being creative and pulling things off. Like, that's a human impulse, I think, certainly for a lot of us. I like being productive. I like getting things done. whether it's in a garden, which is a perpetual cycle. You can pull all the weeds you want. They're coming back next week. Or you play that out through a business where you feel like you're producing something that matters to others.
What it's really, one thing that we need to, what's really important to me, and I'm quite involved in it with the kind of work that I do for Love Serve Remember Foundation, through ramdas.org, through the podcast network, Be Here Now network. And what I see that is so exquisite is the interconnectedness that is created through, you're talking about purpose, through our common purpose. And I'm finding that the cross-generational interconnectedness is amazing. And we've been working, the foundation's been working with Jared's company for quite a few years now, and that's a primary thing, is to bridge these generations. And then that interconnectedness is a very valuable asset, and one that I'm really proud of the kind of work that we're involved with, that we feel in our little corner is making a difference. Yeah. So, but I think
how lucky we are.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. But everyone
to be able to.
No, I was just going to say everyone has that possibility. I mean, you were saying there's 7.5 billion people, whatever it is. The advent of course, the internet makes it extraordinarily possible. No matter, you don't have to have a tremendous amount of money. Whatever you're using, whatever your work is, whatever your attitude is that you bring to it, can make a difference. It doesn't have to be $1 billion bet placed on on a new tech company.
That's right. Well, how lucky we are, the two of us on this call with gray hair, that we get to have intergenerational relationships. And this is not, it's very recent development that the generations got separated. Younger people don't see death anymore. They don't see elders, really. They don't live with them. We don't. And now that we've got to recreate that. And I'm right now. I'm at Hollyhock. You guys know about it, educational retreat center on Cortez Island in British Columbia, and we're hosting a bunch of environmental activists. Now they're coming here for their inner well-being and rejuvenation, but also for making relationship and connecting with each other and being smarter and making strategies and going forth in the world and work on the things they're passionate about. And the fact that I get to participate in these kinds of events and be valued in some way and be able to just be in the mix and have the vitality of that, I know that this is a better way. This is a better way to live. And Raghu, I also want to ask you, I never went around and asked people if they'd be my mentor. That was the last thing in the world I wanted to do. These days, it feels like they're training it in elementary school or something. It's like people, I'm looking for a mentor, that's inspiring.
Yeah. Well, I think especially as men, I can just speak. Yeah. I mean, we're we turn 18, we go off to, wherever, college or some other adventure work, and you're kind of, it all, right? You're expected to kind of to know it all. And this thought of passing the torch or some kind of lineage, I don't know. We don't do a great job of it over here in the West with the passing that. So I think that, a realization that's occurring is that need for connection to the other generations. I mean, I really crave it. It's funny. Most of the people that I'm very tight with are 20, 30 so years older than me.
Old fogies.
And good. I've got a chance. It looks like I got a chance to get in that game with you. Yeah.
And that was one of the things I loved when I first came to Social Venture Network too, was some of the support there. I mean, we'd sit in men's circle, and there's a women's circle as well, and there's also an inner, a circle for men or women. But when I'd sit in men's circle and I sit there and it's going around and we're sharing these kind of the biggest failures, right, in our life, or some really deep, things that maybe we haven't shared with anybody, and it's going around the circle, and there's, the guy next to me is a CEO of a few $100 million company, and the guy next to me is a media mogul, and when we're all sharing the same stuff, and we got we're age span is 50 years, role doesn't matter, wealth doesn't matter. We're just seeing each other as Ram Dass likes to say, as kind of souls, not as these roles that we've come into, and right. It's a beautiful thing.
Right.
There's before we close, we're getting close to the end of our show, but I think there's something important that I want to read from the book, where you say we are still in the very early years, obviously, of making this transition to that you've been talking about. I see how successful the forces of domination and power to the few have been. The rapid overhaul of our economy is a moonshot endeavor. Success is not guaranteed, but we have to try. More people with high ideals need to go into the financial world to bring a new ethic and vision about what really matters. Any of us called from within to do so should give that initially quiet voice our time and attention and cultivate it. Money must be realigned with positive long-term outcomes. That remains a dangerously under-tested solution. Consciously choosing one direction is the root of a meaningful life. Making big choices is one of the deepest privileges of existence. If the clean money revolution succeeds in building a truly regenerative global economy, it will be because of individuals who have heard this call and chosen self-inquiry, love, purpose, and courageous action. That sort of says it all, Joel.
Amen.
I'm inspired. Nothing else I can say.
But I think it goes, and it goes beyond just going into the financial world. I think it goes into, like I said before, you go to your job and you're in a meeting and somebody brings up something that is perhaps advantageous to the company, but completely taking advantage of a sector of our population that would be hurt by this. I think, you've got to be courageous and you got to speak up. It doesn't have to be huge things, just little things.
Especially those of us that have the privilege that we can be mobile and we can make other choices like that. Right. It's inexcusable to have that and not have the integrity to live your values.
Right. Yeah, and I'm glad you're correcting me, because many people are not in that privilege, and the idea of being able to move sideways from one job to the other is not possible for whatever reason. And there are many reasons. So, that's probably the most difficult conundrum of this whole conversation.
Well, I'd just say let's make a fair taxation system, and let's put the right price on exploitation of the planet's resources and of people. And these would not be hard to change if we had the ability, if we had the wherewithal to do that. I like to say that there is way more than enough money in the world to solve most every problem. It's just about where it's directed and our intelligence about how it's being used.
Absolutely.
That's wrong.
Yeah. Well, I think we're in a dark period right now, and that may, what's that Leonard Cohen line? There's a light through the crack. There's a light, something like that. Yeah, it's a great line. But I think the light will obviously we've got to go through what we're going through now.
The cracks is where the light gets in.
There you go. Thank you for that.
We got to keep looking for those cracks.
Yep, absolutely. Joel Solomon, thank you so much. The book is The Clean Money Revolution. And, oh, by the way, you all can help out the Be Here Now Network by going up and buying Joel's book through our Amazon affiliate,
Oh,
which you just copy and paste. You do it too, Joel. We need help from everyone. Copy and paste. Go to
that's
BeHereNowNetwork.com and you'll see Amazon link, and you copy and paste that up into your browser whenever you go to Amazon to buy anything. Like I buy a
that's
lot
gonna
of
make
supplements.
me feel better. It's gonna make me feel a lot better about Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazon is helping to support BeHereNowNetwork.com and the teachers and being able to do what we're doing. Absolutely.
That's my Be Here Now tax.
Yeah.
Be Here Now tax on Amazon.
Exactly.
Get on that.
Yeah, really. So thank you for joining us, Joel, and thank you, Jared, Gagan, Levy, for coming and representing the generation again. Yeah, you missed by one day, but we're going to let you in.
Oh,
And
love you too.
And we'll see you all next week. BeHereNowNetwork.com. And this is Mindrolling, and I'm Raghu.